Good morning. Go ahead and take your Bibles to the book of Psalms, Psalms 149. In prayer for Brother Lenny. He's not here this morning. Woke up not feeling well. Praise ye the Lord. Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise in the congregation of the saints. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of Zion be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name in the dance. Let them sing praises unto him with the timbrel and harp. For the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and the two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen, and punishments upon the people, to bind their kings with chains, and their nobles with fetters of iron, to execute upon them the judgment written. This honor have all his saints. Praise ye the Lord. All right. Now at this time, as we go into our Sunday school, go ahead and turn over to the book of Judges. We're going to carry on where we've been going through in Judges. We continue through the life and the service of Jephthah. If you remember where he left him off, is he has defeated the children of Ammon. He won that battle. He fought them. He came home. We went over not last week, because it was... I didn't teach last week, but the week before we went over where he returned home, and we saw how his vow that he made to God put him in a difficult situation, and we weighed over exactly what that meant. To complete this vow would have meant to break other of God's laws that are set. And we went over in the Old Testament the areas where these laws are. So therefore, we find exactly what brought him really low. So now as it continues, he's won this battle, all this past, and the people of Ephraim come to him. And if you're with me in Judges chapter 12, as we begin in this new chapter, in verse number 1, and the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward, and said unto Jephthah, Wherefore passest thou over to fight against the children of Ammon? And didst not call us to go with thee? We will burn thine house upon thee with fire. And Jephthah said unto them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon. And when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands and passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Wherefore, when are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me? So the people of Ephraim, they've gathered themselves together. Now, it's not just in just a handful that come up to meet Jephthah, but you notice in that verse 1, as they've gathered themselves together, they're coming at him with a collected force. You could say, this is a hostile force. It's a force enough of a great number. I don't know exactly how many come against him at this time, but as we continue into this chapter, you see they fortify themselves as an army. And they do have a battle against Jephthah, and they come against, and they're displeased. And they come and they're accusing him of, this fight that happened against the children of Ammon. They say, you didn't call us about, well, why didn't you call us out to fight with you and go against and fight the children of Ammon? And Jephthah answers and said, he says that he did send out a call and that they didn't come along to fight against him. So it's of who's telling the truth here. Was this call that went out? I'm inclined to believe, Jephthah, that it was well known. The way that these forces were gathered back to then, it took time. And we went over before and we looked exactly of the back and forth that Jephthah had, the communication through writing letters that he had with the king of Ammon. Do you think these letters, they put a stamp on them, they arrived in the amount of time the postage is sent for, how we have the convenience of our postal service today? No, someone would have had to take this letter and go back and forth and make this journey. And what we went over, there was at least a couple letters sent back and forth. And during this time when Jephthah is having this communication via letter with the king of Ammon, we went over how he's trying to talk him out of having a fight. He's trying to show to him that they're justified in the land that they're occupying, that there's no need for conflict, that this has been settled long ago. And he's trying to make it to where he's not rushing into a battle if he doesn't have to. But all during this time, he's a man he's the leader of this force. We went through his early life, and we see he is a military leader, and he has a proven track record of being capable of such. So while he's sending these letters back and forth, I can assure you that he would have been gathering the forces. He's preparing for the worst outcome of, when these letters are not heeded. And that's exactly what happened. Is the king, he dismisses it all, he ignores it, and he continues on, and they have the conflict that has now, God has given victory over to Jephthah. So during this time when he's preparing for this fight, it's of my belief that, the word would be going out. Jephthah's our leader. We're going to unite under him. We're going to fight this enemy, the children of Ammon, who are passing over the Jordan. They're now coming. They're emboldened by the fact that we don't have a leader. They're emboldened by the fact that the country is not doing well as a direct result of their not doing well in serving God, if they've turned away. And we went over exactly of that was an invitation for forces to come in and fight against them. So in verse number 2, Jephthah does say, my people were at a great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, you delivered me not out of their hands. So what did he do? He took it on himself, and they said, okay, guess, who can we count on? Only ourselves. So I want to take you back to a verse that in chapter 10, we went over this verse, a number of weeks ago, so we may have forgotten of exactly, this verse is the initial attack of the children of Ammon, and it gives us exactly the framework of who they're setting themselves against. In Judges 10 and verse 9, moreover, the children of Ammon passed over Jordan to fight also against Judah, and against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was sore distressed. So who is this affecting, them crossing over Jordan? All these tribes that are named in the area. And I have some more maps for you to look at today, and you can see exactly. And this one here, this particular map is all the different tribes. Now this map indicates from in the book of Joshua, when all this land was distributed among the tribes. And you can see here this is the river Jordan, and it passes all the way down until it gets to the Dead Sea. And you see here, this is the land of Ammon. Now this is Joshua, we're in Judges. It's years, but it's not ancient in the past, so this map is still very useful. I have some more that even indicate closer. So you can see how eventually they pushed into the area. So here's Ephraim right here. These are the people that we're going to be doing a lot of talking about today. And part of this lesson is going to be a little bit of a review of exactly who everyone in Ephraim, who they are, who they're the descendants of, and exactly what the important place is. So this is Ammon, they pass through. This is Ephraim. Now I have another map here that shows, this is a map that has different roads and passes through of Jephthah. And this is Ammon. These are roads that Jephthah takes to gather. And you see how right through this area, this stretch, Gilead is written. Jephthah, he's the Gileadites. Those are the people who came over and made him the leader. So do you see here how this is Ammon, these are the Gileadites, and this is Ephraim over here. So what are the Gileadites right now? They are a geological barrier between Ammon and Ephraim. So who's going to suffer first from the attack? The Gileadites. And that's why they're the ones who raise themselves into action and they gather their forces together. So they're the barrier. And so it would, as time would go along, if Ammon is successful eventually this becomes a big problem for Ephraim. But they have a little bit extra time. There's going to be some time passing. There's some battles that have to be won before they get over to what their area of land is. So eventually, the problem that is the problem of today for the Gileadites is eventually, not too far in the future, is going to eventually be the problem of all the Ephraimites in their area. It's going to be at their doors. So they have this blocking of the Gileadites. They fight without the help of them, and now that's all done. It's all over, and now they find themselves. They've traveled and they've met with Jephthah, and they're wondering why he didn't call them, and they're very angry about this. Now, before we get to some of that, let's go through a look about the history a little bit of the Ephraimites, because sometimes if we just talk about all these names of places and these names of people and the tribes, and we could go through, we have all the answers of exactly putting it into context, and it's good for us to go through there. Because sometimes I know sometimes even for myself as sort of, we say, they're all Israelites, right? Just one big, they're the Israelites. But we have here, I showed you this nice map that goes exactly of the tribes of the form of all of, the Israel area and who they are and the descendants of Jacob and exactly who they are. So if you'll turn real quick to Genesis with me, to chapter number 48 in Genesis. And here we find exactly the very first of the Ephraimites, the very beginning, James, of who they are all a descendant of. And it's one of Joseph's sons. Joseph, the son of Jacob, who all these tribes come from. And Joseph had two sons. When he married and he, in his time in Egypt, he took a wife there. And now he has two sons. I'm going to read you here the chapter 48, which is him introducing his sons to his father Jacob. And if you're in verse 48, we'll start in verse number 8. And need some water. And if you're in verse 8. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said unto his father, "They are my sons whom God hath given me in this place." And he said, "Bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, "I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath showed me also thy seed." And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands wittingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers Jacob and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, "Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head." And his father refused. And he said, "I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations." And he blessed them that day, saying, "In thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh." And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. So Joseph's two sons here, Ephraim and Manasseh, and you can find on the map, I showed you Ephraim, and this is the land of his brother, of his descendants, his tribe Manasseh, up above them, right above the land of Gad. And Jacob, he accepts them into the family. He blesses them, and he's giving promise that they're going to have a portion of this blessing. And so, and you can see that later on, and I'll give you the scripture of exactly when this land is divided, and they're given these areas, and they're brought in. So, as we take a look at the heritage of these Ephraimites, it makes it that much bitter of the fact of what they're doing, of their coming against their own people. This isn't just an enemy of Israel. This is civil war. This is, they should have joined together and fought against Ammon. That's exactly how it happened. But now they're coming against the judge of Israel. They're threatening to burn his house down, and they're threatening to fight against him. As we go on, so some different people in the Bible who are also of the tribe of the Ephraimites as they go along. And I'll give you the references where you can find this study. You don't have to go there now, but if you're curious for yourself to write down. So Joseph's son, of course, the original of the tribe of Ephraim. Joshua is of the tribe of Ephraim. You find that in Numbers 13, verse 8 and 16. That's when Moses is sending out the spies. It were revealed there that he's of the tribe of Ephraim. Jeroboam the first king of the northern kingdoms, when the kingdom of Israel split, he was of the tribe of Ephraim. And you can find that in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse number 26. And now, there's a few others that are very heavily affiliated with Ephraim, but I can't tell you for sure they're exactly of that descendant. But the reason I say they're heavily affiliated with them is in the portion of the Bible, it's very clear that they lived in the land of Ephraim. And some will make that leap, say, okay, they must be of the tribes. But I can't tell you for sure that's so. But these people are Deborah. The Bible's clear that she was in the land of Ephraim when we find early in Judges when she takes place. I can't say for sure she's of the tribe, but I know she resided in the land. Another one of the judges who is actually, he's named at the end of the chapter 12 that we're in, Abdon. He is also residing in Ephraim, and he judges out of Ephraim. But once again, I can't say for sure that he's of the tribe, just that he was in the land. Also, the same can be said for the prophet Hosea. And all throughout the book of Hosea, he makes many references to the land of Ephraim and being there. And now I would like you real quick to turn to Joshua chapter 17. I talked about of what this map indicates of how how the land was divided and how they were set about for all the tribes once they had finally crossed over, and they crossed over into the promised land after many 40 years of waiting for that day to come. And at this time, Joshua is the leader of the children of Israel, and he leads them in. Joshua, who we know to be of the tribe of Ephraim. So in Joshua chapter 17, now the area has been divided. A little bit of time has passed over, and the people, they come to Joshua in 17 in verse number 14. And the children of Joseph spake unto Joseph, saying, Why hast thou given me but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people? Right there, the term of using that they're a great people, if you remember that verse we read about Jacob talking about the seed of Ephraim and how they're gonna be plenty, and even more so than the brother Manasseh. That fulfills that promise that Jacob makes. And we see even a short time later, at this time in the days of Joshua, they have amassed. They are a great people. And now they're saying, we need more land. We need some more elbow room. We're growing, and we need some more area. If you looked at this map, you just see, they did kind of get a smaller portion, smaller than the land of that goes to Manasseh, of the brother. And for as much as the Lord hath blessed blessed me hitherto. In verse 15, and Joshua answered them, if thou be a great people, then get ye up to the wood country, and cut down for thyself there in the land of the Perizzites and of the giants, if Mount Ephraim be too narrow for thee. And the children of Joseph said, the hill is not enough for us, and all of the Canaanites that dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both they who are of Bethshean and their towns, and they who are of the valley of Jezreel. And Joseph spake unto the house of Joseph, even to Ephraim and to Manasseh, saying, thou art a great people, and hast great power. Thou shalt not have one lot only, but the mountain shall be thine, for it is a wood, and thou shalt cut it down, and the outgoings of it shall be thine, for thou shalt drive out the Canaanites. They say, we're growing, we need more land. And the verse continues, I knew it was because there's a comma, though they have iron chariots, and though they may be strong. Joshua tells them, if you need more, just go take it. There's more land there. It's inhabited. There's enemies still there. There's still Canaanites. They have giants. They have chariots of iron. They're strong in military might. But he says, you're a great people. You're strong. You can go out. You can conquer and you can take it. Drive out the Canaanites. This is part of the land that's promised us by God. Go out and take it and get them. Joshua, he encouraged them to do this, so they expand at that point. This map indicates of Joshua early in the book, before they did some expansion, and even if something to know, not really relative, but also it's before the expansion, but it's also even before the decrease of Dan, of they lose some of their land to their enemies, of they're driven into the mountains, interestingly enough. There's a lot of enemies, and that's something that we're going to look at now next, of the amount of enemies that are still in the land, even though after they take it. In Judges chapter 1 and verse 28, they say we're going back to the book of Judges, and when we visited the book of the beginning of the book of Judges last, we took a look at exactly why the children of Israel had fallen into their sin and their squalor and everything, and they were worshiping and taking after the customs of their enemies and everything about. And in Judges chapter 1 and verse number 28, and it came to pass when Israel was strong, that's when they first come in, that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwell in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwell in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalol, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Echo, nor the inhabitants of Zidion, nor the Alab, nor the Achizib, nor the Helaba, nor the Abik, nor the Rehob. And it continues on there, and I'm giving you the verse that starts with the Ephraimites exactly. This is who we're highlighting today. But you see that though they go in, they take the land, a lot of the Canaanites, they're still there. They're still left behind. They kind of push them along, and they get a place there. And this is why they're still a mighty people. This is why they still have the might to take the land God's promised them, and also to remain over them. And they have them paying them tribute. They have them paying them. They're allowing them to stay in these areas, and they're receiving back monetary value for this. And all throughout this early part of Judges, it continues to go on, but they didn't completely drive out the Canaanites. And as the scripture we looked at in Joshua, when he recommended to his people to go ahead and take the land and push on and to cut down the forest, remove the trees, and make for themselves more. And man, he says, drive out the Canaanites, have them taken, keep pushing them back against them. Now, while they were a mighty people, while they were strong in their might and everything, while they're able to actually receive the tributaries. Now, what's the issue with this? Well, they're not always going to find themselves as this mighty people. They're not always going to have the ability to keep the Canaanites in subjection. As time goes along, what was profitable for this generation and keeping the Canaanites underneath them, having that source of revenue for them, the next generation, what's going to happen? Well, we've gone over how these influences of land sticking around, and pretty soon they're not taking tribute from them. They're taking something else from them. They're taking their practices. They're taking their gods. They're taking their culture and everything they have, and they bring it out into themselves. See, there's a warning here for us of, if you look to some practical application for ourselves of what happens when we leave the roots of sin is still in our lives. You say, I pull up the top, I have it under control, but is it still around? Is it still there? Is it still in the corner? And is it waiting? And pretty soon you say, oh, I have that under control. That's fine. They even have them paying them tribute. But what happens is they come back to bite them later. There's times in the Bible where God is very clear about taking about what he told King Saul. He said, no one left. Nobody left. Take care of them all. Saul disobeys. He leaves some remnants behind. And what happens? They eventually rise up as a great people again. And they become an enemy of Israel once again. And they become an issue for them that later David in his rule has to take care of. The things that if we let them stick around, we don't get them taken care of, they can be something to come back and bite us. So we've gone over through here. We've seen the Ephraimites of where they come from, of descendants of Joseph, say, and some well-known people in the Bible that we know. I say, okay, now when we think of the Ephraimites, we're thinking more so of where they came from, of who they are, of people. Let's say Joshua, an Ephraimite, of someone well-known in the Bible. He's the ruler at the point for his life. It takes over from Moses, and now we have here, back to where we started in the current day of what we're looking at of against Jephthah. You say, what are you doing? How in the world could you get to this place where you're threatening against this man and you're going to burn his house down? You could turn back over to 12. But on your way back to 12, actually, I want you to stop real quick at verse number 7. Now, a few months back, and as it's getting further away, this year's kind of marching along. But a few months back, I preached a message about through the life of Gideon after he takes and he fights against the Amalekites and the battle he wins there. And I gave you these references of where we are today in Judges, and also before of this isn't the first time that they did this. They did the same thing to Gideon after he had defeated the enemies and they come before him. This is in Judges 7 in verse number 24. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites. I call them the Amalekites. I bet it's the Midianites that he defeated. And to take before them the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and took the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of Jordan. So they meet up with Gideon on the other side of Jordan. And in chapter 8, and the men of Ephraim said unto him, why hast thou served us thus, that thou callest us not? When thou wentst to fight with the Midianites, they did chide with him sharply. And he said unto them, what have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God hath delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison of you? Then their anger was abated toward him when he had said that. Whenever how Gideon at this time, he downplays what his part in the whole fight was. He went and God gave him victory over the overall army. And now he sends out this call to the people to gather up the remnants that escaped after that night when they started slaying each other in the dark and the confusion and the noise and seeing the torches on the hill. And these two princes were able to escape in all this commotion. And when he sent out letters to all the people in the area, and the Ephraim joined in the battle, and they were able to intercept these princes, and they executed them. And now they come to Gideon with the same exact distress, and they're displeased with the same exact way that their ancestors are later, not their ancestors, but the future of the people are going to be upset with Jephthah in years later. And they come to him, and Gideon downplays his part of it. He says, you took out these two princes. What's worth more, taking out the princes, these leaders of the people of Midian, or, a couple thousand soldiers, a couple hundred soldiers, and this abases their anger of how they go against him. He's able to use diplomacy, and they continue on, and they accept this, and they continue on working together against the Midianites, and they continue. Now, years later, now you can go back to chapter 12 in Judges, when we find when they make a similar. And when I preach that message, say, this idea of them coming about, and they're joining up after the work is done. And now that it's safe, they come out of their land, I showed you how they had that barrier in between them of this is going to be Jephthah's problem before it's ever ours. And now that's safe, they come about, and they're quite angry with him. And I want to now read in chapter 12 as continue exactly of how it goes along. I'll reread verse 3. And when I saw that you delivered me not, I put my life in my hands, and passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Wherefore, when are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me? And Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim, among the Ephraimites, and among the Manassites. And the Gileadites took the passage of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead said unto him, Art thou an Ephraimite? If he said, Nay, then said they unto him, Say now Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passage of Jordan, and there fell at the time of the Ephraimites 42,000. Now, of what was their motivation for coming about and making this whole fuss and even threatening against Jephthah and his house, and they're going to burn it down, and they're coming force. They're coming at him as very hostile people, a whole mob with you can picture, if you get the mob mentality in your head, and you just see this vision of a group of people with pitchforks and torches ready to use them as they will. It seems in both cases that they had a desire to partake in some of the glory of this battle, and to be part of defeating against their enemy and being partaker in this of there is recognition that comes to someone who defeats an enemy, and the people will celebrate this and go over, but they didn't make themselves present for it. Now, this chosen insult that they have against the Gileadites. And I wanted to exactly go ahead and see exactly where this comes from. Because usually when you throw out an insult against somebody, it can have exaggeration, but there's usually a grain of truth to it, right? If they're making this, statement against the Gileadites, and this is something that seems to really have enacted there's no turning back. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be bloodshed between us. Of what exactly they say. It's in verse 4. Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim, among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites. Now, they're saying that you're fugitives against us, the Ephraimites, and also of their brother tribe of the Manasseh. And I say, okay, I had to look into this. I say, well, what's the truth in this? Are they fugitives? Are they a dissect off of this? And what exactly of their accusing them of is of a sect of fugitives, of those who have, what's a fugitive? Someone who is on the run, running away from something, some problem of their past and something. You think of maybe a deserter who's run away and made themselves. So as I read this verse, the first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of Australia. And what was Australia initially? Now, Australia was a piece in the United Kingdom, England, years ago, and it was where they banished all those fugitives, and they sent them away. It was a whole continent worth of a prison. And this was a common insult back in that day regarding to this situation. That's how I started wrapping my mind around this. I say, okay, if someone comes from Australia back at that time, will you assume, okay, well, what did you do? What did you do to get sent to Australia? And you've made your way from there. You're some sort of. They would either send you to Australia, or later on, guess what? They sent them here. They sent them to the colonies. If back in the height of England, of the empire, and it was all about the nobility of the society and everything, and there were certain things of you disgrace your family name, and you had to go and you could read it places in history and in historic fiction of what do they always do? They either go to the colonies or they go someplace and I got to get out of here. So start wrapping your head around this insult that they're pushing out against the Gileadites. They're insulting the people, may I remind you, who just defeated the chief enemy of Israel at this time of Ammon. And this is something, this was no small feat. This was a serious enemy, this is a certain threat. So they're sending out this insult. So I'm wrapping my head around this. And go ahead to Numbers chapter 27. So in order to find out exactly how much truth is to this insult, are they actually the Gileadites of, what's their lineage? Do they come from some sort of fugitive? Is there claim to this? And you're going to say, if they're using it as insult, in my perception, say, it could be true. So in Numbers, we go back to there where we have the lineages for us. Let me get turning there. In Numbers chapter 27. In 27 and verse number... Oh, I definitely wrote this wrong down. Oh, no. One second. Nope. All right, one second. I'm going to see if I figure out. I wrote down the wrong number because there are not 28 verses in 27. Man, I'm going to be disappointed if I wrote this wrong and I can't find it again real quick.
Is it 26, 28?
It might be. Let me check. That's what I'm kind of checking over myself. Where they're numbered. You might be right. Let me... All right, I'm going to have to find this again later, and I'm disappointed. I will find it again later, but I'm not going to try and remember it off my head. I'm sorry, I teed that up for you, and then I didn't fall through with the scripture verse, but I'll find it. It's in Numbers somewhere. All right, we're good to you for that. But the insult, we'll get back to that. I'll have for you first thing at the morning service before we begin. All right, okay, so hold that in your minds for later, but of exactly that insult. But continue on of the insults made, it gives reason, and they do have this fight. And we see a huge amount of the people of Ephraim, they're killed. They didn't stand a chance against Jephthah. They were too well organized. They've already been proven very recently in battle, and they come against them. So what happens is, I have a map here. that this is more or less proposed. I won't say, it's 100% accurate, but these are the roads. When you start looking over at all these Bible lands, and some of them, they're only relevant for so long, and then the lines are redrawn. The names change over time, so you find yourself with a whole stack of maps when looking over this. But this map is constructed, and it has somewhat accuracy to exactly everything to do with Jephthah. You got highlighted for us here the land of Ammon, the area of Gilead. It's the one I showed you where there's the buffer in between. And it has here highlighted what is most likely the paths that Jephthah would have been taking. And down from here is when he returns from the land of Tob. We say originally when the first Jephthah is called back by his people, the Gileadites, he's been residing in the land of Tob, and he goes all the way and he meets them back. Now in blue here is the path he takes when he goes about and he leads against Ammon, and they have their battle. They land against. And as he's returning, he meets somewhere along the way in his home, because we say they get as far as, we presume they're pretty close to his house if they're now threatening to burn his home down, of the path that the Ephraimites would be taking as they would meet over against them. So we see here of then, remember I told you Jordan runs exactly down through of the land here. So there's going to be only so many places where you can cross against the river safely with a large or small group of people. So the battle takes place. Many of them are killed. So what's happening now is those who survived this battle, they're retreating back. They're going back to where they came from. These are the Ephraimites. They're returning to their land. They're trying to get away. So the Gileadites, of what they did, they set in these places of where would be places you could cross over the Jordan to make this retreat and make this return home. They're not satisfied just with the victory. They're going to try and take out any remnants of even the people retreating. So this is what they do. They set up and they have this little test of when someone comes along, they question them. They're finding out exactly who they are. They say, well, are you an Ephraimite? Are you someone from Ephraim? They come over. They, of course, they see their hand on the sword and they say, no, I'm not an Ephraimite. No, I'm just passing through. I was visiting. Whatever their story is, if they come over against them. They have this word of the Shibboleth. And whatever the dialect between the people in the areas, it's pronounced differently, and it's a dead giveaway for somebody to pronounce it Sibboleth without the H. And that's how they know. They chose the word carefully. They know it's something that probably had a very good success rate. At least the Bible definitely alludes to it. Of they ask them of this word, and if they can't pronounce it correctly, they're killed. This word Shibboleth, what I found is it's believed that it was the name of a stream in the area, and I cannot find the stream on that because it's definitely too small for it. It's a stream. It's not the River Jordan, but this is the word that they chose of when they were going against them. You say, well, what do we take from all this? Of definitely some of the key things that lead to this civil war, this unnecessary bloodshed, this destruction of others. You say, this is a time when they should be celebrating. This is a time when they should be very pleased that now God has got that they're back on the right track. We went through early in verse 11, and even at the end of chapter 10, of how there is a pushing away. Once again, they're finding themselves on the right track. They are serving God again. They casted out all the idols. They brought themselves back Jephthah. He's going to be their leader. They made the promise that even in the time of peace, they're going to remain. He's going to be their leader. He's going to judge them. But there's conflict, unnecessary conflict. The people of Ephraim, they're not the enemies of the Gileadites. They shouldn't be fighting against them. But what happened here? What got wrong? Well, it was definitely a whole lot of pride. You say, well, we can relate to that. Have you ever had your pride directly cause a problem or a conflict that was unnecessary of something, say, well, why can't everyone just see it my way? And you push against yourselves. Here we see a whole lot of pride and a whole lot of tribalism. they have these lines they're drawn because they are of these separate tribes, but they're still one people. And they find themselves fighting against you. And we can put in our own lives and we can have our mini tribalism. We can have, our groups, our cliques, and say, of against, and we can say, it's us against them. Is that the right attitude to have? No, it's not. Especially when it comes to, you can see it sometimes in a gross display of it is that you have churches against other churches. I'm like, what are we doing there? Of what's happening? And you have these feuds that go about and everything. Now, I hope it doesn't come down to this extreme of bloodshed, but it's something that even you take from this and you say, well, where can I put this in my life? You say that, James, and say, where can I apply this? Certainly, you can see how the hostility of the Ephraimites and the pushing against them, and that didn't end well for them. They could have saved themselves a whole lot of trouble if they went about that situation differently. Now, could Jephthah have also presented differently? Well, he's just saying in the moment, they're going to burn his house down. They're going against him. We have an example of Gideon was able to handle it a little differently. It doesn't seem in Gideon's case that it was as hostile as a force coming against him. But we're going to close there today, and we'll close out the rest of Jephthah and his life at their time. Like I said, I'm going to hunt down that scripture real quick, and I'll have it for you before the morning service. But Mr. Cleon, will you dismiss us in prayer this morning?
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you again for this beautiful